Winter's arrangement, the crisp January air, matched Arjun Malhotra's demeanor as he straightened his tie in the mirror. 35 years old, with graying temples that only enhanced his distinguished appearance. He approached his wedding day with the same precision he applied to his architectural blueprints, methodical, calculated, and entirely devoid of sentiment. "You could try smiling," suggested his younger sister Priya, leaning against the doorframe.
Ah!
"It is your wedding day, after all." "It's a practical arrangement," Arjun replied, his voice even. "Mother and father are pleased. The Sharma family is respected. Their daughter is educated and agreeable. Everything is in order." Priya sighed. "You sound like you're reviewing building specifications rather than marrying a woman." Arjun didn't respond. There was nothing to say. After what happened with Tanvi 8 years ago, the betrayal that had hollowed him out, he had rebuilt himself with carefully constructed walls. His architecture firm was now one of Mumbai's most prestigious. His parents would have their family alliance. Everyone would get what they wanted from this arrangement. Everyone except perhaps Nisha Sharma, but that wasn't his concern. Across the city, Nisha carefully arranged the pleats of her red wedding sari. At 29, she had watched most of her friends marry for love, while she focused on building. Her career as a curator at the National Museum of Contemporary Art, when her parents had presented Arjun's proposal, she had researched him thoroughly, his award-winning designs, impeccable reputation, his complete absence from social life. "He seems intense," her best friend Deepa had said, scrolling through the limited information available about him online. "He seems focused," Nisha had corrected, "and stability isn't a bad foundation." She hadn't mentioned her parents' mounting medical bills or her father's gentle suggestion that the Malhotra connection would ease their financial burdens. Some sacrifices were made silently. The wedding proceeded like a well-orchestrated play. Arjun was polite, attentive to traditions, and completely unreadable. When they finally spoke alone during a brief moment between ceremonies, their exchange, it was painfully formal. "I hope the arrangements are to your satisfaction," he said, as if she were a client. "Everything is beautiful," she replied with a small smile. "Thank you for the thoughtfulness." His eyes flickered with something surprise, perhaps before returning to their usual guarded state. "My mother handled most details. Still, it's lovely." Their new home was a sleek, minimalist penthouse, overlooking the city, all clean lines and muted colors, much like Arjun himself. During their first week together, Nisha realized he operated on a precise schedule, leaving at 6:30 a.m., returning at 8:45 p.m., working in his home office until midnight. They shared meals occasionally, filled with polite inquiries about her work that never evolved into actual conversation. At night, they occupied separate bedrooms. One evening, when Arjun returned from work, he found a small change in his meticulously organized living space. A vibrant painting hung in the entryway. "I hope you don't mind," Nisha said, appearing from the kitchen. "It's by one of our emerging artists at the museum. The exhibit opens next week." Studied it silently and abstract. Interplay of cool blues and grays with a single streak of warming amber cutting through the center. "It disrupts the design aesthetic," he finally said. Nisha's smile didn't falter. Sometimes disruption creates new possibilities. She handed him a cup of coffee, something she'd never done before. "I noticed you take it black. I'll be at the museum late tomorrow for installation. There's food prepared in the refrigerator." That night, Arjun found himself pausing before the painting again. The amber streak bothered him. Its defiance of the cool palette felt almost intentional, like it was fighting to exist in a space that rejected it. When he entered his bedroom, he noticed a small jar on his nightstand that hadn't been there before. Inside was a handwritten note. "Thought you might need these for your proposal sketches." It contained precisely sharpened drawing pencils, the exact brand and hardness he preferred. Arjun placed the jar back on the nightstand, unsettled by the realization that she had been paying attention to him, even as he had been working so diligently to maintain his distance. In bed, he stared at the ceiling, remembering Tanvi's words the day she left. "Living with you is like living with a ghost present but untouchable." Turned off the light. but the amber streak from the painting seemed imprinted behind his eyelids, a stubborn warmth refusing to be extinguished in his carefully constructed winter. Spring's patience February melted into March, and with it came unexpected rain that drummed against the penthouse windows. Nisha had established her own rhythm within Arjun's rigid structure, careful not to disturb the delicate balance they maintained. She added small touches to their shared space: fresh flowers on the dining table, handcrafted ceramics in the kitchen, books of architecture and art history casually placed on the coffee table where their worlds might intersect. Arjun noticed everything but commented on nothing. One rainy evening, Nisha was working late at the museum, overseeing the installation of a new exhibition featuring traditional artisans. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your husband is here, he seems concerned." Confused, Nisha hurried to the main gallery to find Arjun standing rigidly by the entrance, his usually immaculate appearance slightly disheveled, rainwater darkening the shoulders of his suit jacket. "Arjun, is everything all right?" he held up. "Her umbrella? You left without this." The forecast predicted heavy rain. The simple act so at odds with his detachment left her momentarily speechless. "You came all this way? For that?" Something flickered across his face. "It was on my way home." It wasn't. His office was on the opposite side of the city. "Do you like to see what we're working on?" she offered, gesturing to the half-installed exhibition. To her surprise, he nodded as they walked through the gallery. Nisha explained the exhibition's focus on dying art forms being revitalized by a new generation of craftspeople. Arjun listened with unexpected attentiveness occasionally, asking questions about techniques and materials. "This potter uses clay from the same riverbed his family has harvested for 15 generations, she explained, pointing to an intricately designed water vessel. "But he's incorporating contemporary elements. See how the traditional patterns blend with modern geometric shapes." Arjun studied it carefully. "The integration is harmonious," he said finally, respectful of tradition while creating something new. It was the most genuine response she'd received from him in 2 months of marriage. Later that week, Nisha awoke at 3 a.m. to find Arjun's office lights still on. Concerned, she made 2 cups of chai and gently knocked on his door. "I thought you might need this," she said, offering the steaming cup. "You've been working late all week?" He accepted it with visible surprise. "A major project. The client keeps changing requirements." Nisha nodded, turning to leave him to his work. "It's a community center," he said unexpectedly, stopping her. "For children with disabilities, the design needs to be functional, but also ... inspiring." Smiled. "May I see?" Hesitantly, he turned his computer screen toward her. The design was technically brilliant, but sterile, all function, no soul. "It's impressive," she said carefully, though I wondered ... what? What would these spaces feel like to a child? "Architecture isn't just about what we see, but how it makes us feel." His expression tightened, and Nisha immediately regretted her words. But then he looked back at the screen, brow furrowed. How would you approach it?" he asked quietly. That night, they spent hours discussing the project. Nisha suggested incorporating elements from nature, sensory experiences, spaces that could transform with the children's needs. By dawn, Arjun had reimagined the entire design. 2 days later, Nisha received an urgent call from her mother. Her father had suffered a heart attack and was in critical condition. When she arrived at the hospital, trembling and tearful, she was shocked to find Arjun already there, speaking with doctors. "I took the liberty of consulting with a cardiac specialist," he explained, guiding her to her father's room. "Dr. Mehra is flying in tomorrow." "How did your mother called the house when she couldn't reach your cell?"
At night, as they
Sat in the hospital waiting room, Nisha finally broke down. Without a word, Arjun handed her his handkerchief, a small gesture, but in that moment, immense. "He's going to be all right," Arjun said with unexpected gentleness. "The procedure went well." Nisha nodded, too exhausted for words. "You should rest," he continued. "I'll stay and alert you if anything changes." "You don't have to do that," she whispered. "I know," he replied simply. When Nisha's father was released from the hospital 2 weeks later, Arjun surprised everyone by insisting her parents stay in their guest room until his recovery was complete. Your father needs proper care, and your mother is exhausted, he stated matter-of-factly. It's the logical solution. But logic didn't explain the way he checked on her father multiple times a day, or how he rearranged his schedule to be home for dinner each night, or the way he listened intently as her father shared stories from his teaching days. One evening, Nisha found Arjun on the balcony, staring at the city lights. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything you've done for my family." He turned to her, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "They're good people. Still, it wasn't what you signed up for when you agreed to this marriage." Arjun was quiet for a long moment. "What did you think you were signing up for?" he finally asked. Nisha considered her answer carefully. Partnership, not necessarily love, but respect. A shared life, even if our hearts remained separate. He nodded slowly. "And now? Now I think there's more possibility than I initially believed," she said. Honestly, the silence between them felt different. No longer a wall, but a bridge. Neither was quite ready to cross. As April bloomed outside their windows, something tentative began to blossom between them, not quite warmth, but the first fragile shoots pushing through winter's hardened ground. Summer's awakening, the heat of June, settled over the city like a golden veil, transforming the urban landscape into a shimmering mirage. In the Malhotra penthouse, other transformations were taking place, subtle shifts that neither Arjun nor Nisha acknowledged aloud. Morning coffee had become a shared ritual, rather than parallel activities. Arjun no longer retreated immediately to his office in the evenings. Weekends occasionally included outings, architectural exhibitions, gallery openings, even a concert in the park that Nisha had mentioned casually. Surprised when Arjun suggested they attend together. The guest room stood empty now. With Nisha's parents having returned to their own home, her father's health steadily improving. Their absence left a curious void. The family dinners and conversations had brought life into spaces previously filled only with silence. One Saturday morning, Arjun emerged from his office to find Nisha surrounded by stacks of books and photographs. "Research. For an exhibition?" he asked, pouring himself coffee. "Family history, actually," she replied, gesturing to the albums. "My grandmother was a photographer during partition. These are her archives." Arjun sat beside her, a proximity that would have been unthinkable months ago, and studied the black and white images. They were haunting, families fleeing with whatever possessions they could carry, children's solemn faces, destruction alongside moments of unexpected kindness. "She had an extraordinary eye," he said quietly. "These should be preserved properly." "That's the plan. The museum is doing an exhibition on personal narratives of historical events." Nisha hesitated. "Would you like to see her journals? She documented everything." As they pored over her grandmother's writings, Arjun seemed genuinely engaged, asking questions about her family's journey from Lahore to Delhi, the rebuilding of their lives. "Your connection to your history is enviable," he said finally. Closing one of the journals, Nisha studied him. "You never talk about your family beyond your parents and Priya." He stiffened slightly. "There isn't much to tell." "I think there is," she said gently. The silence stretched between them, but Nisha had learned patience. She returned to organizing the photographs, giving him space to retreat or respond. "My grandfather disowned my father," Arjun said suddenly, "for marrying my mother, a woman from a different community, different background, lower status in his eyes." Nisha looked up, surprised by the revelation. "My father built his business from nothing after that," Arjun continued, his voice measured. "He proved himself worthy in every way that should have mattered. When I was 12, my grandfather was dying. He summoned us not to reconcile, but to inform my father that he remained disinherited." "That's terrible," Nisha whispered. "My father never raised his voice. He simply said, 'I built something better than anything you could have given me.' We left, and that was the last time I saw my grandfather." Arjun's fingers traced the edge of a photograph absently. "My father taught me that emotions are liabilities. Success requires focus, discipline, detachment, and you believed him." "I did, until Tanvi." The name hung in the air between them the first time he had mentioned it. She was a designer at my firm, he continued after a long pause. Brilliant, creative. We were together for 3 years. I believed we understood each other, that we wanted the same things. Nisha waited, giving him space to continue or stop. I proposed, she accepted. Then 2 weeks later, I found her with one of our clients. His voice remained even, but his knuckles whitened around his coffee cup. She said I was incapable of real connection, that living with me was suffocating her creativity, that I was emotionally unreachable. And so you made sure no one would need to reach you again, Nisha said softly. His eyes met hers. It seemed the most logical solution. Logic and emotion aren't always opposing forces, Arjun. Later that week, Nisha returned home to find Arjun in the kitchen, an unprecedented sight. What's happening here? She asked, eyeing the ingredients spread across the counter. An experiment, he replied, consulting his tablet where cooking. Video played. My mother's butter chicken recipe. She's been encouraging me to make more effort at home. Nisha bit back a smile. Would you like some help? I would not, he said firmly. This is a controlled process. Of course, she agreed, settling onto a bar stool to watch. I'm just here for quality control. His methodical approach to cooking mirrored his architectural precision, measuring ingredients exactly, following steps in perfect order. When he cursed softly as tomato sauce splattered his crisp white shirt, Nisha couldn't suppress her laughter. Arjun looked up, momentarily offended, until the corner of his mouth twitched upward, the closest thing to a smile she had yet seen. From him, the dinner was surprisingly good. As they ate, Arjun mentioned almost casually, there's a charity gala next weekend for the community center project. Would you accompany me? Nisha nodded, hiding her surprise. I'd be happy to. At the gala, Nisha watched as Arjun presented his design to potential donors, the redesign they had created together during that late-night session months ago. She noticed how he acknowledged her contribution, introducing her not merely as his wife but as a collaborator whose insight had transformed the project. Later, as they danced another first, he held her with a gentleness that contrasted with his usual reserve. The project received full funding tonight, he murmured. Congratulations. She replied, You deserve it. We deserve it, he corrected. The children who will use the space deserve it. As they swayed to the music, Nisha felt something shift between them, a wall crumbling, a bridge strengthening. That night, as they returned home, Arjun paused before they separated to their respective bedrooms. Nisha, he said, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. I've been thinking about what you said about logic and emotion not being opposing forces. She waited, heart quickening. I'm not good at this, he continued, expressing things, being what someone needs. I've never asked you to be anything other than yourself, she replied softly. That's just it, he said, meeting her eyes directly. I think you might be the first person who's actually seen me, the real me, beneath everything else. In the warmth of that summer night, as the city lights twinkled below their windows, something blossomed fully between them, not yet love, perhaps, but the recognition of its possibility. Autumn's vulnerability, September, brought crisp air and falling leaves. Nature's reminder that change could be both beautiful and inevitable. The penthouse had transformed alongside the season's colorful throws draped over once sterile furniture, framed photographs documenting shared moments, and the painting that had once disrupted the aesthetic now joined by others, creating a gallery wall that chronicled their evolving story. Most significant was the change in Arjun himself. His rigid schedule had softened. He now arrived home at reasonable hours, sometimes bringing takeout from Nisha's favorite restaurants. Weekends often found them exploring the city together, or simply reading side by side on the balcony. The separate bedrooms remained, but the emotional distance between them had narrowed considerably. One evening, Arjun returned home unusually late, his expression thunderous as he loosened his tie with agitated movements. What happened? Nisha asked, setting aside her book. Damani Corporation is pulling out of the riverfront development, he said, pouring himself a rare glass of whiskey. 3 years of work, millions in investment. They're walking away because their new board wants to reassess priorities. Nisha knew how much this project meant to him in eco-conscious urban renewal effort that would transform a neglected part of the city into sustainable housing and public spaces. Can anything be done? She asked, without their funding? Unlikely. Have 30 days to find new investors before the land contract expires. He drained his glass. My team's jobs depend on this project, not to mention the community benefits we promised. Arjun spent the next week working frantically, returning home only to shower and change before heading back to the office. Nisha barely saw him, except for the nights she found him asleep at his desk, surrounded by financial projections and desperate revisions to reduce costs. On the 8th day, Nisha made a decision. She arrived at Arjun's office unannounced, bypassing his surprised assistant with a determined smile. Through the glass walls, she could see him on a video call, gesturing emphatically to what appeared to be reluctant investors. When the call ended, she knocked and entered, setting a container of home-cooked food on his desk. "You need to eat," she said simply. Arjun looked up, exhaustion evident in the shadows beneath his eyes. "I don't have time for 10 minutes, she insisted. "And then I want to show you something." Too tired to argue, he complied. As he ate, Nisha pulled out her tablet. "I've been thinking about your project," she began, opening a presentation. "What if we approach this differently, not just as a real estate development, but as a cultural revitalization?" She showed him a proposal integrating an arts district into the riverfront plan community studios, exhibition spaces, artisan markets, and educational programs. The museum has connections with several arts foundations looking for investment opportunities, she continued. They're more interested in cultural impact than immediate financial returns. I've arranged meetings with 3 of them tomorrow. Arjun stared at her, food forgotten. "You did this on your own initiative? Would do the same for me?" she said simply. The next week passed in a flurry of meetings. Nisha's connections proved valuable to foundations expressed serious interest, especially after seeing how the arts district would create jobs and preserve traditional crafts while spurring economic growth, but it wasn't enough. They still faced a significant funding gap with only days remaining before the land contract expired. On a rainy Tuesday evening, Arjun returned home looking defeated. "We're still 12 million short," he said, collapsing onto the sofa beside. "Nisha, I've tried everything." She took his hand, a gesture that had become natural between them. "What about your father?" Arjun tensed. "Malhotra Enterprises doesn't invest in risky ventures." "This isn't just any venture," Nisha countered. "This is your vision for the city's future." "My father doesn't make decisions based on vision or sentiment." "Neither did you once," she reminded him gently. "People can surprise you when given the chance." The next morning, Arjun requested a meeting with his father, something he had never done for a professional matter. Nisha insisted on accompanying him. Despite his protests, Vikram Malhotra's office reflected the man himself. Imposing, designed to intimidate, he greeted them with formal politeness, his expression revealing nothing as Arjun presented the project's details and current predicament. 12 million is substantial, Vikram noted when Arjun finished, and the return timeline is longer than our usual investment parameters. "The social and environmental returns begin immediately," Arjun countered, "and the financial projections over 10 years exceed industry standards." "Numbers can be manipulated," Vikram replied dismissively. "What makes you so personally invested in this particular project?" Arjun hesitated, and Nisha sensed him retreating behind his professional facade. "May I speak?" she asked, addressing her father-in-law directly. Vikram nodded, curiosity flickering in eyes remarkably similar to his son's. "This project represents everything Arjun values," she began. "Precision in design, functionality, sustainability. But, more importantly, it represents growth not just for the city, but for him personally." She held Vikram's gaze steadily. "You taught Arjun that success requires focus and discipline. Those lessons built his reputation and his firm. But this project shows he's learned something equally valuable, that lasting impact requires heart, as well as mind." The office fell silent. Arjun stared at her with an expression of mingled surprise and something deeper. 3 years ago, Nisha continued, Arjun would have designed beautiful buildings. Now he's creating spaces where communities can thrive, where children can learn, where traditions can continue while innovations emerge. Isn't that the kind of legacy Malhotra Enterprises should support? Vikram studied her for a long moment before. Turning to his son, "Is this true? Has your perspective changed?" Arjun straightened, meeting his father's eyes directly. "Yes," he said simply. "Thanks to Nisha, I've learned that what we build is less important than why we build it. And who we build it for." The admission so personal. Once so unlike the carefully controlled man who had once dismissed emotions as liabilities hung in the air between father and son. 3 days later, Malhotra Enterprises announced its investment in the riverfront development, with specific emphasis on the arts district component. That evening, as autumn rain tapped against their windows, Arjun found Nisha arranging fresh flowers in the living room. "Thank you," he said quietly, "not just for helping with the project, but for seeing possibilities I couldn't." She smiled. "That's what partners do. Is that what we are?" he asked, stepping closer. "Partners? I think we've become more than that," she answered honestly. Arjun reached out, gently tucking a strand of hair. Behind her a tender gesture that would have been unimaginable months ago. "I never thought I would be grateful for an arranged marriage," he admitted, "or that I could feel this way again. I would want to." "Feel what way?" she whispered, though she knew the answer in his eyes. Instead of replying with words, Arjun drew her close and kissed her, not with the hesitation of a man afraid of his own emotions, but with the certainty of someone who had finally found his way home after a long, cold journey. That night, for the first time, they shared a bedroom, not just as husband and wife, but as two people who had chosen each other, despite beginning without choice at all. Return to warmth. December arrived with gentle snowfall that transformed the city into a glittering wonderland. From their penthouse windows, Nisha and Arjun watched the first flakes drift down. His arms wrapped around her from behind, chin resting on her shoulder, a position of intimacy that had become wonderfully familiar. "I never liked winter before," Arjun murmured against her hair. "It always felt like an ending." Nisha leaned back into his embrace. "And now I see it differently. The stillness has its own beauty, the clarity." Their lives had merged fully. In the months since that first kiss, work schedules coordinated to maximize time together, shared meals that had become opportunities for conversation rather than obligation, and nights filled with the kind of connection that transcended physical intimacy, though that too had blossomed between them. The riverfront development was proceeding ahead of schedule, with the arts district generating excitement throughout the city. Nisha had taken a leadership role in curating the cultural aspects, while Arjun focused on ensuring the architectural elements honored both function and filling a balance he now sought in all aspects of his life. "We should host Diwali at our home this year," Arjun suggested one evening as they prepared dinner together, another new ritual that had replaced his late nights at the office. "Your parents, Priya, my parents, bring everyone together?" Nisha nearly dropped the spoon she was holding. "You want to host a family gathering here? Is that so surprising? The man I married 10 months ago would have considered it an invasion of his space," they teased, though they both knew the truth in her words. Arjun smiled, a genuine expression that had become increasingly common. "The man you married has undergone significant renovations." The Diwali celebration was everything Nisha could have hoped for, their home filled with laughter, conversation, and the warm glow of diyas illuminating every corner. She watched with quiet joy as Arjun engaged animatedly with her father about education reform, as he helped her mother arrange sweets on platters, as he embraced his own parents with newfound warmth. Late that night, after the guests had departed, they stood on their balcony, admiring the festival lights scattered across the city below. "I have something for you," Arjun said, producing a small package wrapped in silver paper. Inside, Nisha found a delicate silver pendant, a miniature reproduction of the painting she had first hung in their entryway, the one with cool blues and grays disrupted by a single streak of amber. "It reminded me of you," he explained, fastening it around her neck. "How you brought warmth into a cold space, into a cold life." Nisha touched the pendant. "It wasn't just me, Arjun. You had to be willing to change, perhaps he acknowledged. But you had to be willing to stay while I figured it out. This winter deepened. They established new traditions, Sunday brunches at their favorite cafe, evening walks through the snow-covered park, weekend trips to architectural sites. Arjun had always admired but never experienced, with a companion who understood their significance. In January, exactly 1 year after their wedding, Arjun suggested they revisit the temple where they had been. Married? For nostalgia? Nisha asked, surprised by the sentimental gesture. For perspective, he replied mysteriously. The temple was quiet that afternoon, sunlight streaming through ancient windows to illuminate the space where they had exchanged vows as strangers. Arjun led her to the same spot, suddenly looking uncharacteristically nervous. Do you remember what you told me that night on the balcony? He asked. About what you thought you were signing up for when you agreed to our marriage? Nisha nodded. Partnership. Respect. A shared life, even if our hearts remain separate. And I asked what you thought now, and you said there might be more possibility than you initially believed. He took her hands in his. I want to tell you what I see now, 1 year later. Arjun's voice, usually so controlled, wavered slightly. Now see that what began as an arrangement has become the greatest privilege of my life. I see that what I thought was strength, emotional detachment, self-sufficiency, was actually fear dressed as discipline. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, not an engagement ring since they were already married, but a delicate band of rose gold set with amber stones that caught the temple light. This isn't about fulfilling a contract or meeting expectations, he continued. This is a choice I'm making with full awareness. I choose you, Nisha. I choose us. Not because our families arranged it, but because loving you has taught me what it means to be fully alive. Tears spilled down Nisha's cheeks as he slipped the ring onto her finger alongside her wedding band. In Hindu tradition, marriage has 7 sacred vows, she said softly. We recited them here a year ago as ceremonial words. Would you take them again with me? But this time, as promises we choose. Together they spoke the ancient vows, promises of companionship, strength, prosperity, happiness, children, health, and friendship, each word now infused with meaning that had been absent in their first ceremony. Spring arrived early that year, as if nature itself recognized the transformation that had taken place. The cherry blossoms in the park near their home burst into premature bloom, covering the paths with delicate pink petals that danced in the breeze. One particularly beautiful morning, he sat on a park bench watching children play, Nisha's head resting comfortably on Arjun's shoulder. I've been thinking, she said carefully, about the community center your firm designed. The one for children. What about it? I visited it yesterday. Watched how the spaces you created foster connection, creativity, security. She lifted her head to meet his eyes. It made me think about our own home, about family. Understanding dawned in Arjun's expression. Are you saying that perhaps we might be ready to expand our family? She smiled. Only if you're ready to. The joy that transformed his face was answer enough, but he put it into words anyway. I can think of nothing I want more than to build a family with you, Nisha, to create a home filled with the kind of love I never thought possible. Later that evening, as they walked hand in hand along the riverfront, where their professional collaboration had first deepened their personal connection, Arjun paused to watch the sunset reflecting on the water. You know what still amazes me? He said quietly. How differently this could have gone. If you had tried to force me to change, or if I had remained determined never to let anyone close again. But that's not what happened, Nisha reminded him. Instead, you learned that vulnerability isn't weakness, and you learned that patience isn't resignation, he added. As twilight settled over the city they both loved, Arjun pulled Nisha close, their silhouettes merging into one against the deepening sky. I used to think love was a liability, he whispered, something that made you vulnerable to loss. Now I understand it's the only thing that makes life worth living. It's the only thing that truly makes us human. Nisha smiled up at him, the amber of her new ring catching the last light of day. And all it took was an arranged marriage and a year of seasons to figure it out. No, Arjun corrected gently. All it took was you. As they made their way home through streets coming alive with evening lights, they passed countless strangers, some beginning journeys similar to their own, others in different stages of love's complex evolution. What set Nisha and Arjun apart wasn't the arrangement that had brought them together, but the choice they made each day to see beyond surfaces, to recognize the possibility of warmth even in the coldest seasons, and to understand that sometimes the greatest love stories begin not with passion, but with patience. In their penthouse that night, Arjun replaced the original painting, the one with blues and grays disrupted by amber, with a new one Nisha had created especially for him. In this version, the amber had spread, warming the entire canvas with golden light, leaving just enough of the original cool tones to remind them of where they began and how far they had traveled together.